Hello and welcome to our live lesson looking at The Tempest. Joining me here today are members of the cast and creative team here in Stratford-upon-Avon of the most recent production of The Tempest. Throughout the next hour, we're going to be exploring a key scene from the play, really interrogating the language, really being like text detectives and unpicking some of the text. The scene we're looking at is Act 1, Scene 2, and we're going to look at the relationships in that scene. The relationships between Prospero and Miranda, the relationship between Prospero and Ariel, and the relationship between the island family, Prospero and Caliban. But before we do that, it would be great to introduce everybody we have here today. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you play, and what your character wants at the start of the play. Alex, over to you.
Hello, my name's Alex Kingston and I'm playing Prospero. It's the first time a woman has played this role for the Royal Shakespeare Company, so it's a great honour. And I'm playing Prospero as a woman, not pretending to be a man. I think what Prospero wants in our production right from the outset is she wants to get off the island. She is desperate to take her daughter away from the potential danger that the island and particularly one of its inhabitants represents. For me, that is her greatest want, more than dukedom, power, anything else. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rhodes. I play Miranda. And I think from the top of the show, what Miranda really wants in this first scene is she wants the truth, especially from her mother, Prospero.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tommy Simon and I play Caliban. Caliban, at the start of the show, wants essentially his freedom. He feels very shackled. He's imprisoned by Prospero. He's feeling pretty sorry for himself and he's kind of reached the point of just wanting to break out of that, basically.
Fantastic.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth and I'm the director of the show.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Heledd Gwynn and I play Ariel, who is a spirit of the island and part of the spirit world of the island and the nature world. And she is just striving for freedom as well. Similar to Caliban, she has wanted freedom for a long time, and so we kick off at the start of the play where she's doing everything she can to try and get it.
Fantastic, thank you everybody. I think that's a really lovely insight at the top of our session today, because we'll be exploring some of those wants as we explore the scenes naturally in the next hour. So Elizabeth, over to you. Could you tell us a little bit about your interpretation of the play The Tempest and this interpretation that's just been on?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, this is a play about redemption. It's a play about betrayal and the breakdown of trust, and I think asks us to think about what it means to be brave, actually, and to go on a journey of forgiveness of self, and of our interpersonal relationships and of our relationships with the wider world. And we've chosen, I guess, two particular themes to focus on in this production. The first is family, and the way in which we've interpreted that is to reframe Prospero, as Alex says, as a female Prospero. And so the central relationship of the play is this mother-daughter dynamic, and that care and protection is what drives the action of our interpretation of the story. And the other theme is to think about the environment of Ariel's island, and the island that Caliban was born on, and to amplify some of the ecological themes that I think are latent in the text, with its extraordinary references to flora and to animal and bird life and plant life. And so our production has a sort of a toxic island environment that has been destroyed by man and by our plastic waste and by our overconsumption. And so our spirit world is sort of trying to shed the island of that toxicity, and our characters are sort of figuring out how to heal the environment as well as heal themselves within it.
Lovely, I love that. Heal the environment and heal themselves. And just thinking about your rehearsal room period, I wonder if you could just take us back there a little moment and talk about the scenes and the names of those scenes. And I understand how you kind of sectioned that because as far as I know, all of this action takes place in 3 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So 3 hours on one day. And just to talk to us a little bit about those scenes. And
Yeah, it's a very unusual play. It's the only play Shakespeare ever wrote that's in real time. So it takes place in 3 hours, although our production was slightly shorter than that. But yeah, several characters tell us the time all the way through the show, so we know it's all in real time. And it's only got 9 scenes and an epilogue. I mean, some of his plays have upwards of 40 or even 50 separate scenes. This play just has 9 scenes where we see different groups of people and their island experiences, and then ultimately they all come together at the end. So it's uniquely structured in terms of time and space. And we worked as an ensemble in the room. It was a very collegiate, equitable sort of rehearsal process. And one of the tasks that we did as a company was we gave each of those scenes a name that meant something to every single character who was in them. And we decided that all the scenes should start with the. So we have the opening scene, which is the wreck, we called the ship. This scene that we're going to look at now, Act 1, Scene 2, which is the longest single scene that Shakespeare ever wrote amongst the canon as well, we called the island family, because for us it is about everybody on the island and who've lived there for quite a long time before the action of the play begins. And then, yes, each of the other scenes has their own kind of specific name, from the survivors, the opportunists, the challenge, the vows, the mission, the reckoning, which is what we called the final scene, where everybody comes together.
Fantastic. And thinking about the island family then, obviously we've got you here with us today, and obviously talking about that ensemble approach and looking at a lot of improvisation. Again, I wonder if we could look back at that, and I know that you started to create some pictures of that island family and just look at the journey that those islanders, or you guys, went through on that island before anybody came to join, or what happened. It would be great to see that.
Yeah, great. So some of our text detective work was about putting a timeline of events, and we realised that these guys have been living as a family unit, these four characters, for some time, for 12 years before the action of the play begins. And we're told that for the majority of that time, it was all rather lovely. Caliban lived with Miranda and Prospero, and he showed them around the island, and that they loved each other. That's a word that they use about each other. And that Ariel is obviously part of that once Prospero has helped her out of her tree as part of that environment. So yeah, we pitched this lot as a foursome who have lived together very well and happily for a long period of time. So we'll just show you some of the pictures that we made there. So if we just do a simple sort of structure to it. So first of all, we sort of have this idea that Prospero and Miranda sort of arrive on the island together, not knowing if it's inhabited or not at this stage. So there they are, they've survived this terrible journey. Miranda's obviously tiny at this stage, she's 3. Little Miranda. And then at some point they become aware of these 2 other figures. We know that they hear Ariel howling in a tree somewhere, so maybe Hells, you come into shot a little bit over here. Somewhere we hear Ariel, and then they become aware, we think, of this young boy, as Caliban must have been at the time. We think he's about 8, I think, is what we decided he might be, about this age, who is living on his own, because he's not aware of Ariel. He's living a survival existence, probably with some of the animals of the island, a kind of feral existence. And gradually, this becomes the unit. So Caliban is welcomed over some period of time, probably, welcomed in, or perhaps he chooses to come in. You know, who knows who chooses who in this relationship. And then kind of becomes a sibling figure, we think, to Miranda. They grow up together. He's the older brother. We made all these kinds of images. Ariel becomes Prospero's confidant, colleague. They start working together, realising they could learn magic together. These 2 don't know about Ariel's presence, but she, of course, watches and observes them as part of their daily life together. So from having been, solo exiles, actually, they create a family, they create a home together here. And then over many years, Caliban becomes a man in his early 20s, mid-20s, and Miranda obviously goes through puberty as well and grows up into becoming a late teen. And then that's when this relationship becomes problematic for everybody, until a moment where it becomes sexualized and Caliban attempts to, Shakespeare uses the phrase, violate the honor of my child, and we would call that rape today. And he is then exiled from the family, another kind of exile that we see in the play. So off he goes. And this family unit is now broken forever. But we're all still in the same place. Ariel not knowing how, if she can heal, or what this even means for these people. And Prospero and Miranda left with a major problem. How are they going to live on this island with Caliban being there? And Caliban left with the problem of how am I going to deal with, atone for, wrestle with what I have done. And that's where we meet these people at the beginning of the play.
That's really interesting, and it's really interesting to see the love and the family unit, as you say, beginning to be born from the island in a way, and then what happens to that. And as you say, this is the moment where we're going to come in, and we're going to look, first of all, at one of those relationships between Miranda and Prospero. And I wonder if we can just go straight in. And Elizabeth, could you give us a little bit of context about what's just happened in the play?
Yeah, sure. So we think Prospero's been thinking we've got to get off this island somehow. How on earth am I going to get my daughter to give her a different kind of life and away from this terrible situation? By fortune, as she says, by great good fortune, a ship sails past on which are the people who are responsible for her exile in the first place. And so she seizes the moment, and her and Ariel create a shipwreck which will bring them all to the shore so that there can be a reckoning and that a change can be made in some form. So the very first scene of the play is that shipwreck happening. And so we meet Prospero here, aware that the wreck is sort of being completed, contemplating, gosh, this is going to be the biggest day of my life. This is now epic. I've got a plan. Everything's got to follow through for everything to work. We see her kind of going, right, here we go. And she is unaware that Miranda has also seen the wreck. We think that wasn't part of her plan. So Prospero is steeling herself for the day ahead, and then is hijacked, I guess, essentially, by Miranda coming in and saying, what's going on? I've just seen a massive shipwreck, and I think you were something to do with it.
Fantastic. And this is the moment, this hijack is the moment we're going to come in and very much look at it as you might have looked at it in rehearsal. So getting it up on its feet and looking at that journey through what we're about to see now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm leaving to you.
So this is the rule-abiding version.
Yeah, so in this version, we'll just effectively tell the story of the scene, lean into, Mum, what have you done? This feels very upsetting what I've just seen, and that reassurance that it seems in the language that Prospero offers.
Yeah, sure.
If by your art, my dearest mother, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel who had no doubt some noble creature in her dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth or air, should the good ship so have swallowed and the frauding souls within her.
Be collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Woe the day!
No harm. I have done nothing but in care of thee. Of thee, my dear one. Thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art. Not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a full porcel, and thy no greater mother.
One more to know, to never meddle with my thoughts.
'Tis time I should inform thee further. Lend thy hand and pluck my magic garment from me. So, lie there, my art. Oh, wipe thou thine eyes. Have comfort. The direful spectacle of the wreck, which touched the very virtue of compassion in thee, I have with such provision in mine art, so safely ordered, that there is no soul, no, not so much perdition as a hair betid to any creature in the vessel, which thou heardst cry. which thou saw'st sink. Sit down, for thou must now know further.
You have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped, and left me to a bootless inquisition, concluding, stay, not yet.
The hour's now come. The very minute bids thee ope thine ear, obey, and be attentive. Canst thou remember a time before we came unto this cell? I do not think thou canst, for then thou wast not but 3 years old.
Certainly I can. Had I not 4 or 5 women once that tended me?
Thou hadst, and more, Miranda. But how is it that this lives in thy mind? What seest thou else in the dark, backward and abysm of time? If thou rememberest aught ere thou camest here, how thou camest here thou mayest.
But that I do not.
Some years since, Miranda, some long years since, thy mother was the Duke of Milan and a prince of power.
Madam, are you not my mother?
Thy mother is a piece of virtue and was Duke of Milan, and thou her only heir and princess, no worse issue.
Oh, the heavens! Or what foul play was that we came from thence, or blessed was we did?
Both, my child. By foul play, as thou sayest, were we heaved thence, but blessedly holp hither.
Oh, my heart bleeds to think of the
Thank you,
teen
guys.
I've
I'm gonna
turned you to.
I'll stop you there. Thank you very much. This was very, it's interesting, isn't it? This felt very lovely and warm and compassionate towards each other here. But I wonder if we're missing a sort of a ring of truth about the tension that we all know you get in mother-daughter relationships, particularly of this sort of, this sort of age. And I wonder if we should just think back to what you just said to Sophie at the beginning about those big wants, that there is an urgency, there's a ticking clock here, that Prospero has got to, finds that she has to now tell Miranda her story, and that Miranda now has to find a truth from her mum. So I'd be interested to see what happens if we replay this scene and perhaps just up the ante within it. If we let Miranda play to pressure might be the note, play to, come on, what is going on here? What's actually happening here? Why this? Why you? Why all of this? And I'm not giving ground until you really tell me. And that we find that Prospero has to play to convince and to manage, and that actually her unruly, brilliantly unruly, strong daughter, because she's her mother's daughter, is a problem for her to have to manage in the scene. Should we give it another go? Thank you.
Just get some.
If by your art, my dearest mother, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel who had no doubt some noble creature in her dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth, or ere it should the good ship so have swallowed, and the floating souls within her.
Be collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Woe the day!
No harm. I have done nothing. But in care of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art, not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a full poor cell, and thy no greater mother.
Well, more to know did never meddle with my thoughts.
'Tis time I should inform thee further. Lend thy hand, and pluck my magic garment from me. So, Lie there, my art. Oh, wipe thou thine eyes, have comfort. The direful spectacle of the wreck, which touched the very virtue of compassion in thee, I have with such provision in mine art, so safely ordered, that there is no soul, no, not so much perdition as a hair, betid to any creature in the vessel, which thou heardst cry, which thou sawest sink. Sit down, for thou must now know further.
You have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped and left me to a bootless inquisition, concluding, stay, not yet.
The hour's now come. The very minute bids thee ope thine ear, obey, and be attentive. Canst thou remember a time before we came unto this cell? I do not think thou canst, for then thou wast not but 3 years old.
Certainly I can. Had I not 4 or 5 women once that tended me?
Thou hadst, and more, Miranda. But how is it that this lives in thy mind? What seest thou else in the dark, backward and abysm of time? If thou rememberest aught ere thou camest here, how thou camest here, thou mayest.
But that I do not.
Some years since, Miranda, some long years since, thy mother was the Duke of Milan and a prince of power.
Madam, are you not my mother?
Thy mother is a piece of virtue and was Duke of Milan, and thou her only heir and princess, no worse issue.
The heavens! Oh, what foul play was that we came from thence, or blessed was we did?
Both, my child. By foul play, as thou sayest, were we heaved thence, but blessedly holp hither.
Oh,
the heavens. That's terrific, thank you. That felt, I mean, tell me how it felt for you. It felt watching it that it was a very kind of dynamic, entangled relationship, which was lovely to see.
Yes, and it just, there's just so much more energy in the scene. And also, you're listening to each other and you react as one would to the word that is being spoken. You're not just sort of in a sort of a general emotion. So the emotions and the energy changes all the time because it's responding to whatever has been said.
Yeah, it's a much harder work for each other, so you have to be very present, don't you, and catch each other in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels very liberating as well to discover that just because it says pluck my magic garment or sit down, of course you don't have to.
Yes.
You know, you make choices in those as actors.
And it does, as you say, it feels much more like a sort of a genuine, real mother-daughter relationship at this stage in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All good?
Lovely. And I wonder, because we're going to explore this relationship a little bit further later on as well, but we're going to start to bring in Ariel now. And I just wonder, Alex, if I ask you the question, what are some of those similarities and differences between the relationship you have with your daughter, Miranda, and that relationship that you have with Ariel?
Well, talking about the island family, you know, I sort of see it as a family that's also is sort of somewhat dysfunctional. And they are all very different, as families are and your children are. They're not all carbon copies of each other. They all have their own very, very distinctive and unique personalities. And so Ariel, to me, is almost like she's an older sister of Miranda. But, you know, very, very different. And there are things, in a sense, that I feel that Prospero can share with Ariel that she cannot share with Miranda. And there are experiences that she can have with Ariel that are just not anything that she can even talk to Miranda about or let her in on, in a sense. Ariel is in many ways sort of more malleable, more compliant at this moment in time. No, Miranda is absolutely in the sort of the eye of the storm of being a rebellious teen. And quite rightly so. That's exactly sort of what her growing trajectory should be. But it makes it sort of difficult because I felt, and I said to Elizabeth when we were rehearsing, not only is her plan spinning plates, but it's also sort of keeping everybody sort of happy and trying to work. It's literally, I feel like Prospero is just running around constantly trying to keep those plates spinning for those 3 hours. And it gets more and more difficult and fractured, and you know, plates are literally about to drop, and you know, just about catches them before they smash. And
that's a lovely image to have, and I'm going to watch The Tempest next time and think of those spinning plates. And also, you said about the eye of the storm as well.
Yes.
And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about where Ariel's just come from now, and where we're about to join them in this scene.
Yeah, sure. So Ariel has, we learn, has been in the storm, and she has helped Prospero create the storm. We think it's this bit of co-magic that they've done together, where Prospero's been on shore, and Ariel has been literally sort of on the boat. So we think it's a very difficult piece of magic to be able to do. We don't think that they do this very frequently or easily, or have done it before at all. So we think they've really had to work out how they were going to do it together, and it's been a big project. That Ariel has sort of undertaken on Prospero's behalf.
Fantastic. And we're going to see this scene again in a couple of different ways, and just get it up on its feet and play with it.
Yeah, super. So I think the first time we look at it now, let's just simply lean into the idea that Prospero had asked Ariel to complete a task, and Ariel is coming back to report how she did with that job.
Yeah.
She's completed that task.
Yeah.
Because there is, of course, a hierarchy in this relationship as well, that Ariel is bound in some way to do what Prospero asks her to.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Come away, servant, come. I'm ready now.
All hail, great Prospero, hail. I come to answer thy best pleasure, be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled clouds. To thy strong bidding task, Ariel, and all her quality.
Hast thou, spirit, performed to point the tempest that I bade thee?
To every article. I boarded the king's ship, now on the beak, now in the waist, the deck. In every cabin I flamed amazement. Sometime I divide and burn in many places. On the topmast, the yards and bowsprit would I flame distinctly, then meet and join. Jove's lightnings, the precursors of the dreadful thunderclaps, more momentary and sight outrunning were not. Fire and cracks of sulphurous roaring, the most mighty Neptune seemed to besiege and make his bold waves tremble. Yea, his dread trident shake.
My brave spirit, who was so firm, so constant that this coil would not infect his reason.
Not a soul, but felt a fever of the mad and played some tricks of desperation. All but mariners plunged in the foaming brine and quit the vessel, then all afire with me. The king's son, Ferdinand, with hair upstaring, then like reeds, not hair, was the first man that leapt, cried, hell is empty, and all the devils are here.
Why, that's my spirit. But was not this nigh shore?
Close by, my master.
But are they Ariels safe?
Not a hair perished. On their sustaining garments, not a blemish, but fresher than before, and as thou badest me, in troops I have dispersed them about the isle. The king's son have I landed by himself, whom I left cooling of the air with sighs in an odd angle of the isle, and sitting, his arms in this sad knot.
Of the king's ship, the mariners, say how thou hast disposed, and all the rest of the fleet?
Safely in harbour is the king's ship, in the deep nook where once thou call'st me up at midnight to fetch dew from the still vexed Bermudas. There she's hid. The mariners all under hatches stowed, who with a charm joined to their suffered labour I have left asleep.
Ariel, thy charge exactly is performed. But there's more work. What is the time of day?
Past the mid-season.
Oh, at least 2 glasses. The time twixt 6 and now must by us both be spent most preciously.
Is there more toil? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee what thou hast promised, which is not yet performed me.
How now? Moody? What is thou canst demand?
My liberty.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks both of you. I mean, that's a very, very clear reading of the story and of what happened. We get factual information relayed, approved, list ticked off, sort of done. And I guess that leans into the sort of transactional nature of this relationship as well that you've just demonstrated for us there. Maybe just thinking about our island family though, and thinking that to me doesn't read like a relationship of people who've known each other for 12 years and have been on all kinds of emotional, physical, spiritual kind of journeys together. And that's the kind of bit of this scene that I think that we want to try and capture. I think this is our moment, isn't it, to show that in the relationship. Yeah. And I guess maybe also think about Ariel's own relationship to the tasks that she does. Yeah. And perhaps a joy, a delight, whatever it is that she experiences as she carries them out. So maybe again, let's try this again. Let's give ourselves permission to, I think for Ariel to be in the heat of the adrenaline rush that she must have just undergone, having done what she'd done to the ship. To keep Prospero on that journey of the urgency of what's happened, how are they? Oh my God, this day, the charge that this day is going to have for her. And that little thing about their shared memories, about what they've done in the past. And that bit, and we get a lovely little window into that here. I think what will happen by default is that we'll naturally get a much more equitable relationship between them, which means that when we get to the demand for my liberty, that might come out in a stronger way at this moment.
And can I check, are we playing then that in doing this task, Ariel is of the belief that will give her liberty?
Yeah.
That is sort of the deal that we've made.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. This was the big thing, wasn't it?
Okay.
Get the ship done, and then
she's free.
The freedom is a coming very shortly. Yeah, okay. I think that's
can
what
we,
she imagines.
And can we have Miranda asleep?
Yeah, brilliant.
Because she was asleep in she is actually asleep.
She is asleep here, that's right.
I put her under my spell.
Yes, and how we played this in production was that Prospero saw Ariel coming, but Ariel wasn't invisible, and so she sort of has to quickly sort of magic Miranda asleep. And it's quite interesting having a third figure in the scene as well.
Yes.
I'm also just going to chuck a couple of bits of rubbish on in our space, just because those are things that our spirits then begin to interact with.
Yes, sure.
Which might be quite fun to play. Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, just chuck them in.
So we'll just take it just that little bit before so I can put Miranda to sleep. Here, cease more questions. Thou'rt inclined to sleep. Oh, 'tis a good dullness. And give it way. I know thou canst not choose. Come away, servant, come. I'm ready now.
All hail, great Prospero, hail. I come to answer thy best pleasure, be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled clouds. To thy strong bidding task, Ariel and all her quality.
Hast thou, spirit, performed to point the tempest that I bade thee?
To every article. I boarded the king's ship. Now on the beak, now in the waist, the deck, in every cabin I flamed amazement. Sometime I'd divide and burn in many places. On the topmast, the yards and the bowsprit would I flame distinctly, then meet and join. Jove's lightnings, the precursors of the dreadful thunderclaps, more momentary and slight outrunning were not. The fire and cracks of sulphurous roaring, the most mighty Neptune seemed to besiege and make his bold waves tremble. Yeah, his dread trident shake!
My brave spirit! Who was so firm, so constant, that this coil would not infect his reason?
Not a soul but felt a fever of the mad and played some tricks of desperation. All but mariners plunged in the foaming brine and quit the vessel, then all afire with me. The king's son, Ferdinand, with hair upstaring, then like reeds, not hair, was the first man that leapt, cried, "Hell is empty, and all the devils are here."
Why, that's my spirit! But was not this nigh shore?
Close by, my master.
But are they, Ariel, safe?
Not a hair perished. On their sustaining garments, not a blemish, but fresher than before. And as thou badest me in troops, I have dispersed them about the isle. The king's son have I landed by himself, whom I left cooling of the air with sighs in an odd angle of the isle, and sitting, his arms in this sad knot.
Of the king's ship, the mariners, say how thou hast disposed, and all the rest of the fleet?
Safely in harbour is the king's ship, in the deep nook where once thou call'st me up at midnight to fetch dew from the still-vexed Bermudas. There she's hid. The mariners, all under hatches stowed, who with a charm joined to their suffered labour, I have left asleep.
Ariel, thy charge exactly is performed, but there's more work. What is the time of day?
Past the mid-season.
Ah, at least 2 glasses. The time twixt 6 and now must by us both be spent most preciously.
Is there more toil? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee what thou hast promised, which is not yet performed me.
How now? Moody? What is thou canst demand?
My liberty!
Before the time be out. No more.
Super, thank you guys, thank you guys. Isn't it interesting how you can earn that intensity of liberty because you've had the shared joy of the previous? Tell me how that feels for you.
Well, yeah, because there is such a shared joy, and I think for Ariel, thinking that it's the climax of their relationship and their plan and what they've worked towards, and thinking that it was all for the fact that you would be happy and I would be happy.
Yeah.
And then just having that moment where she goes, no. It's hard to go from a real high to then just a really rational, no, I want my liberty. So it sort of it felt like it has to be really just use the energy in a different way.
Yeah.
So interesting to think about what scene people think they're coming in to play. Ariel thinks she's coming in to play a kind of da-da, 12 years, boom.
Yes.
Whereas, of course, Prospero thinks she's in to play, okay, first step of many.
And also, I think, having just had the scene with Miranda, where Miranda is coming in with, unexpectedly, with her energy, and I'm having to sort of do a 360 in terms of reassuring her and everything. And then I've got my other daughter coming in, sort of having done the job, and then also having sort of suddenly we're having a domestic, which is great, because that's kind of what it is. That is the island family. That's the dysfunction. It's me sort of saying, yes, I'm going to give you your liberty, but there's just another little thing I need you to do first. It's like, yes, we can go to the Disney store, but you've got to do this first. But you promised me. Well, no, I've changed my mind. And it feels just kind of real because it's gnarly.
Yeah, exactly that. And this scene is amazing at setting up these 3 relationships that we then watch play out, everybody finally getting some kind of freedom for each other by the end of the play.
Yeah.
Also lovely to see the kind of off-text, unscripted interactions that one can have with other characters who are in scenes. It's always interesting to think about what other dynamics they give you as well.
I was going to touch on that, actually. It'd be interesting, Heledd, if I could just ask you what your relationship is with Miranda, because I noticed that moment where you did place the garment over her.
Well, yeah, because, Ariel only speaks and has sort of that sort of relationship with Prospero. But as in the work that we did about the island family, we realised they've lived as a unit for so long, 12 years. So seeing Miranda grow up from such a young age, and same with Caliban as well, there's an investment and there's a love there. Surely because for Ariel, she has been able to watch and observe. I know they don't see her, but I think it feels nearly like even more of an intense relationship because it's never quite fulfilled, or maybe the spell is never broken because it's just something that is kept at a slight distance. But I think it's nice to interact with because they have lived together for so long.
Thank you so much. Now, we were talking a little bit there about Caliban. So let's bring in Tommy and look at this dynamic now. And we've talked a lot about the island family and about this violation that's happened. And we're going to be looking at the moment, sort of the first moment in this interpretation where they come together again, where they see each other. But before we look at that moment, Tommy, can I just ask you about your journey with Caliban, really, and who he is and who he is in this play?
I think for me, approaching the part, kind of had to look at it in terms of you've got the emotional, but then the sort of emotional journey, his origins, but equally in terms of actually performing the role, his physicality and vocally as well, kind of what that is. So like very quickly to go through them. In our version, he's been raised kind of feral on the island for however long, and so he's kind of been interacting with animals. So a lot of what I was doing initially, kind of physically, was starting kind of here, doing a lot of sort of research on people who have grown up in the wild and how they move, and sometimes like kind of doing like walking like apes or whatever. There's this kind of a lot of people raised by dogs, for instance, and we looked at what animals there are on the island. And there's bears, wolves, hedgehogs, all sorts, but like probably kind of having interacted mainly with wolves, that kind of thing. So there was this kind of like predatory thing going on there, and then how that kind of works in his interactions with people who walk very upright, and how he's kind of learning to he's in this middle ground. And when we meet him as well, he's been mostly in a cave for the last 8 months or so in our version. So again, what that does to you, kind of being scared of being hit maybe by, he's scared of Prospero at the moment, all this kind of stuff. So he's this kind of physically, vocally, again, kind of with the animals, there's a lot of, he has his own language prior to that in our, he says it, he says, it talks about them teaching him their language, so kind of implying that he had his own language. But for the majority of time, he would have been mainly kind of making sounds in the wild. So what that is, so there's a lot of sort of off-script noises of kind of like snarls and growls and that sort of thing, and also where that and how that informs where the character's voice sits in my own voice. But then, in terms of origins, Sycorax has come from Algiers, so my heritage, I'm Iraqi, I'm not Algerian, but it felt very important that kind of we use Algeria as a real place, whereas usually it's kind of used as this generic other place that is sort of, just a bit ambiguous. So we wanted to find ways of acknowledging that, and kind of someone who's lost the connection to their heritage, but still has some links from when his mother was alive. So we have things like, she left behind these prayer beads. We put in some language at the end. We put in Takbaylit and Arabic, which are sort of two mainly spoken languages in Algeria. And then, emotionally, the emotional journey of someone who's just actually pretty traumatized. Like, he's lost his mum very young. He's grown up in the world, doesn't have the concept of how you process these emotions, and then he's just had another dislocation from another family that had changed his life again, and then that's all ruptured. So he's filled with a lot of anger and doesn't really understand what's going on. He's kind of angry with himself, he's angry at Prospero, that's where he's channeling it. So he thinks that if he gets rid of her, all the pain will go away, but it's obviously a lot more complicated than that.
It's a really fantastic insight into the character, and really fantastic to hear how in rehearsals you find all of those things as well, through all of those characters. So Elizabeth, could you, it's a bit later in the day because we know it's happening in real time, where are we now in Act 1, Scene 2 still?
Yep, so we're still in the same scene. We're a little further in the scene. So Prospero and Ariel have finished their conversation. They've negotiated how Ariel is going to be given her freedom in 3 hours' time at the end of the play, effectively, when all the tasks are done. And part of that has been discussing Ariel's own origin story, which is about that she was imprisoned by Caliban's mother in a tree, and Prospero then kind of freed her from that. So we've learnt all of that. Ariel has been sent off to go and to do the next bit of the task, which is disguise herself as a water nymph in order to then begin to help Ferdinand find his way to this place and to meet Miranda. And while that's happening and Ariel's off doing that, Prospero says to Miranda, we need to go and see Caliban. And for us, that's an important part of this very extraordinary day, that Prospero feels that Miranda, as part of her processing of what's happened between them, that before she leaves this island, hopefully at the end of the day, if the plan goes well, that she needs to come face to face with Caliban again, the perpetrator of the crime against her, and begin her own journey of processing what's happened there. So Prospero has suggested to Miranda that they go. Miranda's rejected that idea and said, I'm absolutely not. And Prospero said, we really need to. And I'm going to set him the task of bringing some wood in, which is going to be used later on as a challenge with Ferdinand. So we're going to start this scene where Prospero said, go and get us wood. Caliban has said, absolutely not. The curses that my mother taught me, please, rain down on your head. And he says, no, I'm not doing it. I've got to go and eat my dinner. And then we're going to join the scene where he says, this is my island, not your island.
Great. And again, we're going to have a look at the scene in a couple of different ways and very much look at it as you would do in a rehearsal room. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
This island's mine, by Sycorax, my mother, which thou takest from me. When thou camest first, thou strokedst me and madest much of me, wouldst give me water with berries in't, and teach me how to name the bigger light and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee, and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile. Cursed be I that did so. All the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you. For I am all the subjects that you have. The first was mine own king. And here you stymie in this hard rock, whilst you do keep from me the rest of the island.
Thou most lying slave, whom stripes may move, not kindness. I have used thee, filth as thou art, with human care, and lodged thee in mine own cell, till thou didst seek to violate the honour of my child.
Would it had been done, thou didst prevent me. I had peopled else this island with Calibans.
Abhorred slave, which any print of goodness wilt not take, being capable of all ill. I pitied thee, took pains to make thee speak, taught thee each hour one thing or other, when thou didst not, savage, know thy own meaning, but wouldst gabble like a thing most brutish. I endowed thy purposes with words that made them known. But thy vile self, though thou didst learn, thou had that end which good natures could not abide to be with. Therefore wast thou deservedly confounded into this rock, who hast deserved more than a prison.
You taught me language, and my profit on't is I know how to curse. The Red Plague rid you for learning me your language.
Hag-seed heads, fetch us in fuel, and be quick thou best to answer other business. Shrugg'st thou malice? If thou neglect'st or dost unwillingly what I command, I'll rack thee with old cramps, fill all thy bones with aches, make thee roar that beasts shall tremble at thy din.
I must obey. Her art is of such power, it would control my damned god Setebos and make a vassal of him.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, everybody. Gosh, Shakespeare really turns up the emotional temperature, doesn't he, in this scene? It's interesting looking at this whole scene, this whole Act 1, Scene 2, the whole island family, and by the time we get to this point, my God, we're in the dark, nitty-gritty of it. And you can feel that in the shift in the language. Some of the extraordinary kind of violent and vivid words and imagery that is sort of used here, and that all of these characters use in this moment. And for me, that's very revealing of the depth of hurt between them all. And certainly in our production, we really lent into the complexity of this hurt, and that this family can speak to each other this way because they have loved each other so much, and now they treat each other so appallingly in this scene as well. So I think there's a couple of things that we could try and inject into this scene. One is that I think we should deal with the idea of the physical threat that Caliban poses to Prospero and Miranda. And we know that she has some magical capabilities at which she presumably is using to kind of contain him. How long that magic's going to hold for, who knows? What the longevity of it is, we don't know. But in our production, we used Prospero's staff, didn't we, and created a physical barrier. So it'll be interesting to sort of recreate that here, so we can see what it's like, I guess, if it'll do two things, won't it? It'll show Caliban's own restraint, physical restraint, and it'll give a degree of safety.
And my coat, which is like
Absolutely,
my armour.
yes, of course, your magical coat, which is your
Do you
armour.
Yes,
Get my coat, daughter, thank you.
Lend my hand.
And in a way, the space delineation will give a different kind of freedom or confidence to how we might be able to express ourselves here.
Yeah.
I'd also really love us to there could be what could be the perfect outcome of this scene? Who knows? That everybody says sorry and apologises and heals, and there's a dream version of how this scene could go, and then there's a terrible version of how this scene could go. And it's interesting to see, I think, what it's like if we all everyone's sort of trying to do this scene, but we just can't quite find find our way to it. I think the closer we tread that line, the more interesting the dynamic of the scene is.
Because it is the thing, like you're saying, of getting to the point of forgiveness at the end of the play, trying to get close to it here, but something's, that thing that stops you from just saying, I'm sorry, or whatever it is, kind of not being able to...
And I've sort of said this before, but there is that amazing thing that we see here, that everybody's right and everybody's wrong all at once. Shakespeare doesn't write a kind of binary. Prospero's bad for enslaving Caliban. Caliban's bad for raping Miranda. It's not really about that. It's about the frailty of humanity and the murk in which we all live, and how they found themselves in this awful situation, and none of them are happy with it. I mean, everybody is suffering in this. Certainly in our interpretation of this.
Attempted as well.
Cool.
Attempted on the raping front.
Sorry,
Attempted.
yes. Attempted rape, yeah.
Attempted to violate.
Yeah, okay. Fab, let's give this...
Not this better, but...
Give this,
this is the...
But it is.
Yeah.
So this has been put down as a barrier.
Yes, sorry, Alex, yes. Yes, and just a little thing. In our production, we brought Ariel in right at the end of this scene, just so that she observed the final moment, just to kind of keep our idea of this island family, this family unit alive. So it'll be, if it's all right, Sophie, we'll do that here as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
And I'd performed some magic and placed this, so it's almost like it's a force field between the two of them, so he cannot cross this into our space, and that's our protection. And
I've been really childish and said I must eat my dinner.
Yes, you've been really childish.
Should we do this on... Is it better?
Yes, maybe it's better if it's that
way.
that.
Should
Yes,
we do that way?
then it's better. Yeah, sure.
Cool. I'll try not to step too far back. Yeah. This island's mine, by Sycorax, my mother, which thou takest from me. When thou camest first, thou strokest me and madest much of me, wouldst give me water with berries in't, and teach me how to name the bigger light, and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee, and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile. Cursed be I that did so. All the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you. For I am all the subjects that you have, that first was mine own king, and here you stand die me in this hard rock, whilst you do keep from me the rest of the island.
Thou most lying slave, whom stripes may move, not kindness. I have used thee, filth as thou art, with human care, and lodged thee in mine own cell, till thou didst seek to violate the honour of my child.
Would it had been done? Thou didst prevent me. I had peopled else this island with Calibans.
Abhorrent slave! Which any print of goodness wilt not take, being capable of all ill. I pitied thee, took pains to make thee speak, taught thee each hour one thing or other when thou didst not, savage, know thy own meaning, but wouldst gabble like a thing most brutish. I endowed thy purposes with words that made them known. But thy vile self, though thou didst learn, thou had that int which good natures could not abide to be with. Therefore wast thou deservedly confounded to this rock, who hast deserved more than a prison.
You taught me language, and my profit on't is I know how to curse. The Red Plague rid you for learning me your language!
Hag seed, hence. Fetch us in fuel, and be quick thou'rt best to answer other business. Shrugs thou, manus! If thou neglect'st or dost unwillingly what I command, I'll rack thee with old cramps, fill all thy bones with aches, make thee roar, the beast shall tremble at thy din!
I must obey. Her art is of such power, it would control my damned god Septimus and make a vassal of him.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks very much. It's very painful to see how much it costs them all to go through, that encounter. Yeah, and any observations? I'm always fascinated, Jess, by how you deliver that deservedly more than had deserved more than a prison line, because I think one could read that on the page and think, a prison, what's worse than a prison? But actually, you always pitch that as you're better than this.
It's interesting because I think if you look at the text and the actual you can define the words however you want, the river and the boat, the words and the meaning underneath them can be two different things depending. But, more than a prison, you might think is the death penalty. You deserve even more than this. Whereas I think from all the work that we did on the love and the family dynamic is that, you deserve literally more. You deserve everything. We loved each other so much that you deserve all of this. But because of what's happened and you learn, and the whole good nature's, it's that thing of what you were saying, you're trying to reach for each other. You're trying to reach to say, I'm sorry, or she's trying to maybe explain why he's in here because he can't be trusted, but she doesn't really quite say it in the right way. And does he need to be taught that? It's so everyone's kind of going about trying to say, I'm sorry, or get forgiveness, but kind of all doing it the wrong way that the other people can't really meet them at. And I think having that in mind when delivering, because those words can be seen as when you read them first off, feel really brutal and really horrible, but they did love each other so much, so they're going to say the worst things to each other as well. But that, and I think it just highlights what you were saying, that it's upsetting for all of them in that moment, and that no, Caliban doesn't deserve to be in there and like, you know, as much as Prospero isn't, it doesn't really have the right to be as mean. You know, it's all grey.
Yeah.
All grey.
Yeah. Learn to love the grey.
Learn to love the grey. And Alex, I just wanted to talk about that moment where your magic, in a way, harmed your child and how that felt and where that came from.
Yeah, no, it's horrible because she's sort of in this scene, she sort of is reduced, sort of comes down to the level that he's at. I feel, you know, his. It's almost like the animal is starting to wake in her. You know, the language is so horrendous, and she doesn't use it anywhere else. As you know, the terms like hag seed, and I mean, it's just really vile. And I feel that, and you know, thou earth, thou tortoise, you know, slave. It's all these, but it's sort of, the language is sort of also very kind of like earthy, and it's like she's not elevated at all anymore. It's like she's getting deeper and closer almost to her animal self as well. And the fact that she does, I mean, we've chosen to use the magic. You know, I've chosen to make those words a magic spell. But the fact that I am, he's already sort of prevented from coming to them on the island by magic spells, and now I'm inflicting yet something else on him. But it's his disrespect of her, you know. He's choosing again. I mean, it's an awful thing because it is. It's like, you know, back in the day. I mean, thank goodness parents don't do it now. But back in the day, parents and headmasters and people, you know, they would. You'd have punishment. You'd get the slipper or something, or be beaten with a cane. And I mean, it's almost, she's reduced herself to that, which is this wayward, difficult, impossible child that I brought into the bosom and the safety of our home has violated our home, and he is this thing that I kind of don't want anything to do with anymore. He's dangerous. I mean, she's just...
It's so interesting to see how she makes choices about whether her magic can be benign or malign.
Yes.
And that becomes something that she gets kind of called out on, actually,
She
by
does.
Ariel later in the play. And she's beginning to go down a route where her magic could take her in this particular sort of direction. And, you know, we'll see in the play her kind of pull herself back from that and go, actually, I don't want to be that. You know, my own kind of self-forgiveness and self-care needs to be about not being that kind of person. So
it gets darker and darker, doesn't it?
Yeah, to kind of give a
magic.
little flash of that here, and we see what the power can be used for all good and for destruction. And it's a line we gave our goddesses in the masque, you know, that those who use power, you know, to do hurt but do none. If you have that power but you choose not to do it, those are the people who can, going back to our big theme, heal each other and heal the earth at the same time.
And it's also having this relationship so broken here offers then at the end of the play where there is then that moment where Prospero understands what she has done and asks his forgiveness. And you can only really do that if you've seen, you know, the depths that she's gone to, really, and the dark places she's gone to.
And there's so much that we can, it's so rich to explore this with you all in this rehearsal room. And it could be like 5 days worth of exploration. And obviously you have a huge amount of rehearsal period or 6-7 weeks rehearsal as well. And that's all those conversations that are coming up. So thank you for allowing us this insight into your rehearsal room and giving us those moments of observation and exploration and just seeing those bits come to life on stage. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching in your classrooms up and down the country. There will be more resources on our Shakespeare Learning Zone from the play The Tempest and from all of Shakespeare's other plays as well. And thank you very much.